You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So, if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your, stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Bryan Reeves, the signs men look for to decide if you are the one. Ladies, welcome. Super excited. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you're getting a little taste treat because you can see a former U.S. Air Captain, Bryan Reeves, who's my guest. He's an internationally renowned author and life relationship coach. He's hosted the podcast Men This Way. Want to catch that for sure. He has a viral blog that's been read by over 30 million people in every country on the planet, except North Korea.
As far as we know.
It's a good hall pass. And he has a new book, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her, which is now available on Amazon and other retailers. And we're going to give you a link to get that. People are always asking me, Bryan, like, are there people who do coaching for men, who help men? And I'm like, yes. And so here we go. We brought you one at your doorstep. So I'm super excited to have a conversation with you. So let's just talk about some limiting beliefs, I think, that women have. And I want to preface this by saying that our listeners are really smart. So if I were to just go up to them and ask them some of these questions and say, are these your limiting beliefs? They'd be like, no, of course not. Right.
Yeah.
But like deep down, they have some of these feelings and beliefs. So one of them is that we know men and women are wired differently, but I think there's something to speak on that difference doesn't make men exempt from really wanting connection and really giving a shit.
Yeah.
Because I think they're like, oh, men ghost, men this, like they actually don't give a shit. They don't need relationships. Can you just help us understand how we're different, but also how we're the same?
Yeah. So, I'm 48 years exquisitely aged as a man, been in this man body for quite some time. And I'm married for 7 years. Met my wife at 41 when I was 41. And so I've been working with, I started coaching couples about 10, 12 years ago. And really the last few years, I've decided to exclusively work with men, particularly in the domain of intimate relationship. Because, Marni, to your point, I 1000% don't just believe, I know men want to succeed at intimacy. We want to do well in our relationships. Now, I just used key language, do well. We want to do. Everything's I know you're a student of the masculine and feminine map, and, men in our very common identification with masculine values, doing is who we are. What we do is who I am. If I do good, I am good. If I do bad, I am bad. And I think what happens for men, though, in relationship is we don't know what we're doing.
My co-host, when I do my reality show deep dives, he just says, like, men are dummies.
Yeah. We're very well-intentioned dummies.
Right.
Even this cliche, this stereotype that men are insensitive. I think what's actually true is men are profoundly sensitive. It's that we have covered up our sensitivity with ages of programming and our own insecurities about being exploited for our weaknesses, the ways in which we were taught not to feel, that feeling is not safe in our childhood, and on and on and on and on. I think men are profoundly sensitive, and we deeply yearn to succeed at intimacy. We just don't know how. We don't know what the hell y'all want from us. We don't really get it. And we do come at things very differently. My wife and I, for example, this word connection, I think you said in your run up to this question, men want connection too. That's a fact. I want to feel connected to my wife. However, my wife and I, we have a different experience of connection that if we're not aware of it, it gets in the way big time.
Okay, so give me an inside peek, like, because I think this is really important, just so we can look for these behaviors in our past relationships or future relationships. What are some ways in like you feel connected to your wife that I would be like, really?
Yeah. Now, obviously, nothing applies to everybody, but for me
Right,
personally, and I think for a lot of men, if nobody's bleeding, if the house ain't on fire, if we can pay all our bills, nobody's starving, we don't have to call the cops or the firemen or a lawyer.
right,
I'm good. We're good. I feel
right.
connected to you. Don't even have to be in the same room. We're good. Why are you so upset? What is the problem? Right? That's sort of the great existential, fundamental challenge we find ourselves in. I don't get why you're bothered in this moment. Everything's fine. And for my wife, it doesn't show up that way for her. For her, connection is experienced when, Terry Real says this very beautifully. How for many men, we tend to connect what we call shoulder to shoulder, right? We're looking out into the world, doing something together. Our focus isn't on
Right.
each other; it's on the world out there, and we're shoulder to shoulder, taking on the challenges of the world.
Right.
Well, for my wife, and as Terry Real would say, for many, not all, but many women, the connection happens more nose to nose, and that's intimacy as well. It's nose to nose, face to face. And so for my wife, she feels connected with me when we're doing face to face, nose to nose, paying attention to each other, sitting on the couch, staring into each other's eyes. That face to face focus, which,
Right.
Marni, quite frankly, is often overwhelming for me.
Right. I love your honesty. So good.
And for many women too. I mean, a lot of
Yes.
us, it's not just a man-woman thing. A lot of us who grew up in homes where intimacy wasn't practiced in that way, where and for a lot of people that was even unsafe to be nose to nose, face to face. Being seen meant I could get crushed. And
Right.
so
I want to just point something out here because I
Sure.
think this is a really important point that you're making, because I have to my job is to call y'all out on your shit. And I think women can sit in their little couch and be like, I want a guy who's nose to nose. And then actually, when that happens, they're like, blah, right? Or they sabotage those moments, or a guy really is into them and wants to have that kind of connection, and they freak out. So I think this is a really important point, because just make sure that what you say you want is what you're also capable of. Because when you pointed out that sometimes both sexes are uncomfortable, I think that's a really important point.
100%. And I think what we want in balance. We don't
Yes.
want overwhelmingly, no woman wants a man who is going to be in her face, wanting to stare in her eyes all the time.
No.
At some point, any woman, just any human, any adult human is going to say, get out of my face. I have a life to live. That doesn't include you at this moment.
Right. Right. Right.
And so I think we get into relationships also with the fantasy that I'm going to get my needs met, my desires met just as I want them. And even then, when we do get that, there's a part of us that has a visceral repulsion, because actually that's not that's not balance. That's just me getting a fantasy of something that is unsustainable. And quite frankly, as I said, at some point it's even offensive. Get out of my damn face. And likewise, if my wife and I are constantly just doing things together and we aren't doing any face-to-face intimacy ever, I'm going to eventually feel disconnected from her. I might feel functional in our lives, and I think a lot of men fall into this trap. We feel everything's functioning. Man, I can't tell you how many men I've talked to over the years, even in my own family, who expressed shock that their wives left them because everything was fine. I don't even know what she was upset about. It's so common because we don't understand how connection happens when for our partners, when for us, many of us, it's just, hey, bills are paid. I'm not cheating on you. I'm coming home to you. I'm not beating you. I'm doing I'm not disrespecting you verbally like I'm a good man, right? And we completely miss the experience of connection that is important to our partners, because many women don't know how to talk about it either.
Well, that leads perfect to my next question. So if you can help me speak in a way that men understand, right? And I say to my partner, a guy I am dating or wanting to connect with, I feel disconnected, right? How do we articulate that in a way that doesn't make a man, to your point, be like, oh shit, I'm doing bad, I'm bad, right? How do we have those? How do we have like healthy communications so that men want to be engaged in the growing process with his woman?
Well, it's a fantastic and very important question. I think one of the first thing that arises for me inside of that is the come from. Where is the deliverer of the complaint, you could say, and that's a masculine word, complaint, to, the feminine version of that is just experience. This is what's happening, right? What's your come from? And I'll break it down into this distinction. Are you coming from relationship as obligation or invitation? Obligation or invitation? I'm a strong proponent of relationship as invitation. Nobody wants to be obligated.
Right.
I have in the have to story of I have to do this, I have to show up, I have to connect, I have to perform, I have to whatever. We're adults. I mean, we need to have autonomy to feel our adulthood. And so that's the first question I have is or the first suggestion I have is come from invitation. Here's where I want to be met. Right? I mean, invitation implies you don't have to meet me here. You're an adult. I mean, you might not say these words, but this is the tone of it. You're speaking to an adult man who gets to make his own choices.
Yeah.
He can even choose to show up in ways that will cause you to not want to be around him. But that's his freedom to choose.
Amen.
And so that first piece, relationship as invitation. And I think relationship done well is an endless invitation. It's an endless series of invitations. The gap that exists between my wife and I, for example, this connection gap. Again, I think in the beginning of our relationship, in the first few years, we couldn't go a week without her telling me, I don't feel connected to you. And every time it would kind of blow my mind because I'm like, why don't you feel connected to me? Like, I'm right here. Right.
We're watching White Lotus and I'm not on my phone. Maybe just a little. Why are you not connected?
And so it took us time. It took time for her to communicate, for me to understand, well, what is it that you really need to feel connected? Okay, we need more date nights. Okay, we need, and not just date nights where we're doing shoulder to shoulder, but where we just or sit and really just be with each other and hold each other's hands and again do nose to nose intimacy. Okay, all right. She needs me to talk to her with a certain tone of voice that isn't my work voice, that isn't the way I might talk to just anyone on the planet, even respectfully. Like, she needs a special tone that I reserve just for her, right? That communicates, he sees me, he loves me, I'm special. That helps her feel connected. Well, it took me years to really understand that and to practice that in ways that would land for her. And, now she'll still tell that to me sometimes. I don't feel very connected to you right now, but now, it's months. We go months before we'll hear that because we're 7 years together. We're very practiced. But the thing is, to my wife's credit, she's essentially never come from the relationship as obligation place. And that, for me, particularly just given what I've been through in my past, that doesn't work for me. I can't function in relationship as obligation. The title of my book, Marni, is Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her.
Right. Choose
Her Every Day or Leave Her. That title came through as a reflection of how I had been in relationships in times past where I was in it, but I wasn't really all in. I wasn't really fully choosing. And what often made it harder for me, and I'm not blaming my partners, I was an immature nincompoop. I was a dummy.
Right.
But it wasn't not just a dummy. I was clueless. I didn't know that I was a dummy.
Right.
That's the worst kind of dummy. That's the worst kind of dummy.
Guy. Yeah.
Yeah. The guy that doesn't know he's a dummy is the worst kind of dummy. And I often felt relationships, because what would often happen is, yes, in my indecisiveness, or everyone is allowed to doubt relationship, especially my wife and I were talking about this, about a mutual friend's a challenge that she's going through in her own relationship. She's at about a year and a half with someone, and they're really going through some stuff. They're they may not make it through what they're going through. Stan Tatkin, my wife and I were talking about this number. Is it 2 years, a year and a half, one? Well, Stan Tatkin tells us, and I think it's 2 years, that we all have the right to vet our partners. Right. And that takes time. And I believe Stan Tatkin says that take up to 2 years. If we're still vetting our partner after 2 years, something's wrong. We should have decided after 2 years, okay, this is someone I'm all in with, or this is not someone I'm all in with.
Right.
And if I'm all in with someone, and choose her every day or leave her. If I'm all in with someone, it doesn't help that I don't need her reminding me or suggesting I'm obligated. No, I'm fucking choosing this.
Right.
I'm choosing this. And I'll tell you, as a man, again, I've never been a woman, so maybe it's universal, I don't know, but for me, it's deeply empowering, and it helps me lean into the relationship when I remember I am choosing this. I don't have to show up for this relationship. If I don't show up, there will be consequences, and I don't want those consequences. I want a healthy, vibrant, thriving relationship with my wife, and that ain't always or even often easy, right? But that's what I'm committed to. And that, coming from, that's the invitation. And my wife lays down that invitation when she doesn't feel connected, when something's missing for her. She gives me the feedback, and I often still don't get it right. But the fact that I'm leaning in the direction, and I'm accepting her invitation and stepping into the challenge, I suspect we'll play that out for, God willing, the next 40, 50 years of our lives together, and it'll be great.
I love that. I think this is another really important point that you make, because one of the default not working behaviors that women do is they constantly need to know. Right? Like, am I safe? Right? Am I safe? Are you in? Are you exclusive? Where's this going? Which I would guess, based on what you're saying, is almost like counter man, right? Because it's like, oh my God, are you making me lose my freedom? Like, what do you need from me? Right? Like, that's right. Very much like that whole paradigm is kind of obligational, right? Like, man, woman, moving forward, are you in? Are you out? Moving forward, are you in or out? I need to know, right? Yeah. So it's really an interesting thing about like, how do then we do it in a new paradigm? Like, what is a new, better way for us to do the relationship progression conversation and experience?
Yeah. I'm often talking with the men that are my peers, my friends, and the men that I work with, that relationship done well is a paradox. It is a paradox. It is an obligation that I am freely choosing to step into. My wife and I, we've created a life together. We are enmeshed on so many levels, not just emotionally and intellectually, but physically, materially. The world we've created. We're working to have a child. I mean, we have a dog. They're like, right. Again, could I walk away from all of that today? I could. I'm not, but that doesn't feel in integrity with my own being. So in a way, I've obligated myself to show up. So it is a bit of a paradox. And I think that, particularly a lot of men, we love that shit. We love paradox. We love these sort of philosophical things that we can't quite figure out, but they call us into our mastery and into our challenge. Now, that's a conversation amongst men, I think. I don't really want my wife, I don't want to have that conversation with her as much. Let me come back to your question, Marni. Can you please restate it again?
Yeah. So if the paradigm is that typically it's women who are saying, or women feel, let me just start by saying that, because when I interview men, they're like, women, you hold all the power, but women mostly who are listening never feel that way. Right. So they're sort of being like, is he in? Where's this going? Right. And what I had said was like, so does that basically trigger the anti-freedom freak out factor in a guy? And so then what do we do differently?
Yeah. Well, again, I think the come from. I am all for women being clear in what they want, what they're ready for, what is important to them, what their boundaries are. I think that's so important. My wife and I think on our very first date, maybe even before we had a date, we talked about what we're ready for. I mean, and I was ready for a relationship. I told her before we ever met, look, I'm looking for the one I go all in with. I had no idea that it was going to be her. I legit had no idea, but I was clear, and she was clear. And our you know, our relationship is a reflection of that clarity. Again, I think, look, some men want to lock down the relationship quicker than some women do, right? I mean,
Right, that's
that
true.
certainly happens.
Right.
But in the case that we're exploring, you know, I see this a lot where, because women, you know, one of my female friends told me years ago that she was taught two things as a girl. One, don't depend on a man,
Mhm.
and two, don't inconvenience a man.
Those are some fucked up paradigms.
Fucked up paradigms. And you can see that play out in relationships, if that
Oh
rings
yeah.
true for a woman, right? She I think even the way that we're trying to come at this conversation, which, look, I think is respectful, but the conversation, like, how does a woman speak what is true for her in a way that doesn't trigger his "I'm out of here," or his, you know, it doesn't feel inconvenient to him. And what I want to say to that is, let it fucking be inconvenient to him.
Well, this is such a, so I totally agree. I totally agree in that. And what I was going to ask you as my follow-up, so we'll just go there, is because I've always said, like, with the right guy, you kind of can't do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm always advocating to my clients
Mm-hmm.
to be the leader of that conversation you had with your wife. Like, hey, just so you know, this is what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, let's just make sure before we invest 5 minutes that we're on the same page. And so what I hear you saying is, like, the right guy who wants to receive the call, right,
Yeah.
will then be activated in a way of, like, wow, like maybe I'm her person, like, maybe, you know, right, like, then you're, like, kind of more in partnership than opposition.
Well, look, he may squirm. I squirmed, you know, at the beginning with my wife. I did a lot of squirming. But her come from always mattered. Her come
Yep.
from of predominantly invitation. You know, she had her unskillful moments where it sure didn't sound like an invitation. It sounded a whole lot like obligation, you know, demand and insistence. Look, we're all unskillful sometimes, but overwhelmingly my wife's stance has been, we'll continue to do relationships so long as we're good for each other. Even as I hear those words come out of my mouth, it doesn't even begin to capture our commitment to each other,
Right.
to the relationship. But our stance has been, look, if it turns out at some point where we're being in such a way, or our paths are in such a way that staying with each other would be unkind or cruel to each other, we won't keep doing this. That, to me, again, is invitation. It's not if you are no good for me anymore, then I'm out. It's, I realize, if I'm no good for you anymore, then I'm out. And
Right.
and when two people meet in that place, you know, I had some choices to make early in my relationship with my wife, as she was clear to me, as clear as she could be, and as skillful as she could be about her boundaries, her sensitivities, certain needs that she had. You know, I'll give you an example. In our first month of dating, I was traveling to New York a lot, and she was in LA, and so I was 3 hours ahead of her. And I didn't want to wake her up in the morning, so I would call her at the end of my workday. You know, it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon now, and it's 3 o'clock her time, and this is the first time she's hearing from me all day. That didn't work for her. She didn't like that. So she told me, she said, you know, I get anxious when I don't hear from you all day. I wonder, is everything okay? What's happening? And, you know, Marni, in my mind, I'm thinking, of course everything's okay. I mean, I would tell you if something's
Right.
not okay, or, I mean, we just talked last night, everything's fine. Again, no one's on fire. We don't have to call
Right.
the cops. Like, and if something's not okay, you'll tell me, right? That's
Right.
what my mind is thinking. But I was like, okay, gotcha. So you do want me to call you in the morning? Okay, fine, great, I'm in. So next morning comes, I call her. Hey, babe. Yep, how you doing? Did you sleep good? Everything okay? You good? Yeah, I'm in my work day. Yeah, everything's, yep, all good here. Yep. What are you doing today? Yep. Okay. Well, all right, go get at it. All right. Talk to you later. Bye. How do you think she liked that, Marni?
She liked it.
She hated it.
Oh, because it wasn't connected.
It wasn't connected. I was checking off the box.
Right. Yeah. I
Right.
get that. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Don't call
now,
me if you're not really there.
don't call me. Don't. I'm not a box you're going to check off. And she didn't say it like that, but she again communicated about, you know, this uh, I don't remember the words that she used, Marnie, but I do remember her being clear that this doesn't feel connecting either. Okay, so I
You're,
remembered.
you're like,
So I remembered.
okay, round 3,
Yeah,
let's go.
that's right. Crack the knuckles. Here we go. Exactly. Crack the neck muscles. Here we go. I remembered tone of voice. I remember a previous girlfriend that I had worked with in an office setting. She once buzzed me over the intercom in our office, and I picked up the phone, and just like I would talk to anybody on the office intercom, yeah, that's all I said. Yeah. Well, for the rest of our relationship, she would remind me how I yelled at her that day.
Oh my
You know,
God. Wow.
and
Yeah.
again, to me, it's not a question of did I yell or did I not yell. That's irrelevant. The way that I used my voice was not connecting for her.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
my wife, my girlfriend at the time, the way that I was using my voice was not connecting for her. So, okay, not a big sacrifice for me to work with my voice a little bit. So I started to learn, hi, babe. Good morning.
Right.
How are you?
I'm just laughing because my husband and I were talking about like voice, and he's British also. So there's like a whole thing, but we were joking. He was like, so when I talk really nicely to people, we were talking about customer service. He's like, I need to like do an up thing at the end. Like, oh, thank you very much.
That's funny.
He was exaggerating, right? Because he was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't talk that way. That's not my normal thing. Be like, hey, babe, what's up? He's like, hey, right. So
Yeah.
I just think it is interesting that those things are universal, right? Because we are built differently and we operate differently.
When I work with couples, and even a lot of the work that I just do with men individually is it's nervous system work.
Yes.
I tell couples, when you're doing relationship well, you're managing each other's nervous system. I've learned how to be with my wife, by which I mean how to use my tone of voice, how to touch her or not touch her, how to how to hold my body, how to, sometimes I'll even like kind of, if my face, I kind of get, I have a dead face. I'm not very emotionally expressive through my face. So, and sometimes that freaks her out. So I've learned to, I'll kind of stretch my face a little bit so I can soften it. I'll exaggerate certain, I don't know, gestures, and to be both playful and also to communicate to her. It's like, you're safe with me. I choose you. I'm all in. I'm willing to dance with you and work with you and help you, because that signals to her nervous system, okay, yeah, I'm safe.
We're good.
We're good. He's here. He's with me. Even if he's not doing it perfect, I see that he's at least leaning in. Her nervous system gets that big. And when she's in that mode, she feels more connected. And she does the same for me as well in different ways.
Right. So let me ask you this. I'm sure people are listening and they're like, oh, my Lanta, this is a lot of work. Right? Like, so is it when someone says like, I'm looking for a conscious man who's emotionally available, who's financially stable, I try to aim for a values-based checklist. So let's just stop there, right? Honest integrity. Are there men that are there, right? Like people are going to be saying, well, where do we find a guy like you, right, Bryan, who's going to be like, oh my God, you want me to work on my facial expression? Like, so are those guys out there? And how do you know if you are dating someone who is gonna really work and grow on the relationship? Because I think our listeners have a really big value on learning and growing, and they want that so much.
Yeah. Well, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
You first off, you find out the kind of man you're with really early by being honest about your experience with him. If you're what's coming up for you, like my wife did. I mean, she told me that in the first 30 days of our relationship. You calling me just at the end of the day is not working for me. I'm feeling anxious. I'm wondering, is everything okay? Now, had I responded with, come on, don't be ridiculous, everything's fine, I just didn't want to wake you up.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye. Well, at least she knows that she has a man who's going to be very dismissive towards her experience.
Yep.
A lot of women, a lot of men for that matter, we'll blow right past that red flag.
Right.
I had this funny Instagram quote that I created. I think it's from my book. It might be my book. I don't know. But like don't mistake chemistry for compatibility. Chemistry doesn't give a damn about shared values or shared lifestyle choices, or chemistry just you can see one body in the trunk and just shrug and say, well, there's only one body. I see
Right.
potential here.
Right.
And we need to be paying attention to the bodies in the trunk.
Yeah.
Right from the start, we need to pay attention to when I voice something that isn't working for me, or a discomfort, something that is maybe not comfortable to share. How does he respond? Again, I told you, Marni, I did a lot of squirming in the beginning of my relationship. I think that's very normal and natural. I mean, two people coming together, as you know very well, that's a messy process. And though, at least most of the time, I did my best to at least be willing to listen and to work with what was coming up for my partner. Now, here's the thing, though. This is why I say be careful what you wish for. A so-called conscious man is also going to stand up for himself.
Yes. I love that. We want that.
He's not going to sell himself out just to make you happy.
Right. I think this is really, really huge. I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. She was like, you know what I need is I need a guy who's not going to let me get away with shit and like boss him around and tell him what to do.
100%.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's great that she can articulate that. And when a man actually shows up and does that, she's going to be the one squirming.
Right. Exactly.
So,
yeah, she is.
And look, I know, I say be careful what you wish for. And I know in our deepest heart of hearts, we all want that, because relationships call us into our greatness, men and women. The subtitle for my book, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her. The subtitle is A Guide for Your Journey Through the Transformational Fires of Love and Intimacy. It's for men and women, because relationships are transformative if we're doing them right.
They
doing
are.
them well. There's this myth in pop culture that I'm going to find someone, and I should find someone who's going to just love me exactly as I am. I'm just going to get to be who I am in this relationship, and they have to accept that. And again, paradox, relationship is paradox. That's true. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't serve to be with someone who wants to change you, and relationship is going to change you.
Right. Yes.
It's going to change you. And for many of us, that change is going to be very uncomfortable. And we aren't, because the parts of us that don't want to die, don't want to die. And when we're single, and those parts of us may be even making us successful in certain parts of our lives, the hyper independence. I think, a lot of women who are succeeding in the workplace, fantastic. And the skills that they're using in the workplace, fantastic. Women should be developing and have, let's say, masculine and feminine leadership skills. Well, oftentimes in intimate relationship, those can get in the way of the intimacy that they crave.
Okay. One last question. He's like so humble. Okay. So I did a TikTok recently, and it was don't freak out by men's mixed signals. And as you're talking, I'm like, oh my God, these are some of the things that I was saying about, what guys are doing at the beginning of the relationship, because they're also assessing, and they're like, yeah, I really want a relationship. Like you said it, I want to find my forever. And then you're like, holy shit, is this my forever? So I was just wondering if there's any nuggets from your book that you might want to add to the conversation we're having on TikTok about, don't freak out about men's mixed signals, and what can you kind of do that would help you be your authentic self inside of that.
I love that. I got to follow you on TikTok then. I'd love to see what you're doing there. I know it's it's a great, I know it's a great platform for conversation and engagement. So I'll find you there because I'd love to see
you
that.
all should find me there, Dating with Dignity. Yes. I'm saying a bunch of shit that men want. So get on there and be like, yeah.
Dating with Dignity. Got it. Good.
Got it. Y'all need to come. Okay.
So I'm curious, when you say don't be freaked out by their mixed signals, what was the underlying message of your video?
The underlying message was that we need to be centered and grounded in our enoughness and our worthiness, right? And that if a guy is sending mixed signals, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or something wrong with him, right? That dating is in fact a selection process. So he might be confused, and that's fair. And you probably are too. So instead of like
Yeah.
making up stories about
Yeah.
him or what he wants, or you collect data, you ask questions,
Yeah.
and you see what he does, the consistency over time. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my spiel.
Well, I love that. I think that's right on point.
Okay,
And
good.
look, everyone seems to kind of get that communication is important in relationships, but then when it comes to actually practicing it, again, we have no idea how to do it. We
Yeah.
don't know to do it in what I would say are skillful ways. And as I shared with you, I mean, my wife and I were having real conversations with each other before we even met for the first time. Conscious relationships are not comfortable often having these kinds of conversations. Like I'm all for, again, I come back to that example when my wife shared with me in the first month, I'm not hearing from you twice a day. It's confusing. I don't understand what's happening. That was an example of, I say, skillful communication. That was her
Right.
perhaps feeling mixed signals from me. I wasn't pinging her twice a day. For her, that for her was a measure of, okay, he's still here. He's showing up. That's not how it was for me. I mean, I tend to be more avoidant in my attachment style. I could go days without communication and I'm good.
Right.
I'm still all in on the relationship. I just need a couple days.
Right. I think my husband and I are both like that. We travel and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I'm still here. Are you good?
Yeah. Exactly. And for some women, that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
I think you're right on. And I think also relationships do go through stages and the first few months you're with somebody, oh man, that can be such a shit show. It can be all over the place. You're so new to each other. You're so new to each other. I mean, I'm 7 years with my wife. We're still figuring certain things out, how to be with each other,
for
how
sure.
to, I mean, the first few months, forget about it. Just communicate. And if your communication is received in a spirit of at least relative openness and willingness to hear you, keep going. Fantastic. Right. I do think there is a period of time, and it's probably somewhere between a year and 2 years, where if you're still getting really mixed signals,
Yeah, then that's not cool.
That's a major red flag.
Yeah, I would say that flag is on fire. It's so
That flag
red.
is that mixed signals, and but also I think, again, the first question that I'll often ask is, well, are you talking about it? Okay, you're telling me there's a mixed signal, or you're confused. Well, are you telling him,
Right.
or are you telling her? Are you guys having this conversation? And because again, to Stan Tatkin's point, I think it can take time to vet our partners. We're talking about spending a lifetime with somebody. That's no small decision. It's
Right.
okay that take more than a few months to figure out. My friends way back in the day when I was in the military, we had this joke that maybe there's truth to it, that it took 2 years to figure out if you wanted to be someone, because you had to go through every major holiday together at least once.
Right. Yeah.
You had to do a 2-week road trip together.
Yeah.
Got it. And you had to do some kind of home improvement project, even if it was just, putting together a piece of IKEA furniture. Like if you can, that takes about 2 years to figure that out. You can get through that, you're good.
Yeah, totally. If you can get through that, I think that's so important. And the other thing, I was on air with Ryan Seacrest last year, at the end of last year, and they do these writer questions. And there was a woman that had been with her guy for 17 years. And she was asking, like, how can I get him to marry me? And I was literally like, 17 years, you haven't had that conversation? Like,
wow, yeah.
Right? Like,
wow.
That is, and that's a big exaggeration, but I'm bringing it out because I know we have like over 40 some thousand people that listen every month. There's probably a couple of you that have been with someone for 2, 3, 5, 10 years. And so really want you to hear what Bryan's saying is like, have the conversation and also that if you're going to be in a relationship with someone and you want to have it great, then you need to go through the fire, right? The transformational fire. And that's not avoiding an important conversation. So
I'd like to say on that note as well, and this is, again, I'm a man speaking. I think this also is it maps to the masculine and feminine dynamic of things. Men need challenge. We rise in the face of challenge. If there's no challenge, we wilt. I mean, it's like, there's a reason professional sports teams don't play high school teams. It wouldn't be fun for anybody.
No.
Well, we need challenge in our relationship too. Respectful challenge,
Right.
not disrespectful challenge. That doesn't serve. Not harsh criticism as challenge, but the challenge of knowing, well, if I don't lean in to what this woman in the case we're talking, if I'm not leaning into the invitation, like she's clear, this is the kind of party I want to have. I want to wear clown suits and listen to 80s music and have ice cream cake. That's the party I want. And she's communicated that to me. If I don't want to have that party, then I either shouldn't go, or if I do go, I better learn to fucking like ice cream cake and wear my clown suit.
Yes.
And figure out how to dance to 80s music, or at least let it be in the room. Because if I can't, it's just going to be torture for everybody. But that challenge, that I do believe that a woman has to be prepared to leave her relationship in order for a man to feel like, wow, okay, it is going to be a challenge for me to stay here because I have to keep leaning in. Because if I don't, she will leave me. I don't think that that's a bad thing to have in the atmosphere.
Yeah, I freaking love that. Well, I could talk to you for literally hours. I'm a new YouTube podcaster, but I'm gonna say, by the way, we had Stan Tatkin on the show, so somewhere up there, maybe my team can put like a link to that episode in the show notes. We want to make sure we put a link to your amazing book because it's not just for men. Question. This is a quick question. If you meet a guy and you really like him, but you think he could benefit from your book, is that a bad dating move to be like, hey, I just heard about a book on a podcast. Do you want to check that out? Is that
not at all? In fact,
okay,
good. I've known both women and men to put my book on their dating profile.
That's amazing.
Actually, put it out there, and in fact,
out there.
And in fact,
I love that.
A lot of the men in my programs, actually, because again, as I shared, I'm focusing on serving men. I have two programs. One is called Elevate Your Relationship. It's for men who want to thrive in relationship. A lot of the men in that program found it because their wives bought the book, were reading it, left it around the house somewhere. The toilet's a great place. Right. And he picked it up and looked at it and found himself in it. So again, I'm all for communication. Playful communication is great because it's non-obligatory, right? I mean, there's no. I love how you said it earlier, Marni. You said it beautifully. You can't do the wrong thing with the right person. I believe that 1,000%.
That's great. I love it. Well, come follow me on TikTok. All y'all too.
I will. I'll find you.
Yeah. So I love this conversation. You're amazing. It's so inspirational. I think you're really, I love a coach who comes on here and says like, yeah, my relationship isn't perfect. I would say to anyone who's listening, if you find somebody who's like, it's butterflies and rainbows all the time, we never argue, run the other way. Like, who are they? Anyway, just a public service announcement from me. By the way, if you are listening to this on a podcast network, come find us on YouTube. You can see how handsome Bryan is, and you can see what I wore for my workout today. And we want to get our viewers up because our viewer hours up because we want to get verified. And since I'm 56, I don't really know what that means, but apparently it's really important. So come listen on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, come find us on TikTok, and whatever you do, life check yourself because that's cool. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to dwdvip.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.